Good evening and welcome to this session on creative resumes. My name is Jodi Hammer. I'm your host today, and I work as the Career Services Specialist at the NPCA, National Peace Corps Association's Global Reentry Program. So I'm in the DC metro area, and I'm thrilled to be here with you and talking about this topic. As a fellow RPCV, I always love working with RPCVs and helping you with the job search. So it's my privilege to be here. Thank you so much. And what we're going to cover here tonight, we're going to talk about creative resumes. We're going to also have plenty of time for Q&A, so you can certainly ask your questions in the chat box if you have any. And then you can certainly ask questions while we go along. I think we have a small enough crew that I'm comfortable if you want to unmute yourself and ask the question. If there's times where I say, are there any questions? Please feel free to do that alternatively. So we will be good to go. So let's go ahead and kick off. I'm going to talk to you about creative resumes, right? And so I have a sample here that I want you just to very briefly take a look at. And I'm going to show you two other samples for you to kind of look at and compare it to, okay? All right, so this is the first one. This is the second. Just take a quick glance at what this sample looks like, right? It's quite different than the first one, right? But these are both examples of creative resumes. They're not your traditional resume that most people, think of when they think of, a chronological resume, which I'm going to show you in a moment here. Here you go. This is more of what you've heard me talk about, right? This is just a sample example of, a more chronological style resume. I personally like the bulleted key qualifications up at top versus the little paragraph there. But hey, in general, this is more of that traditional, format, at least, right? Where it has the information about you in those categories. That's what most of us, I think, are used to or think about when we think about resumes, right? That's more of your traditional resume. So, but what do you notice? If you can please write it in either in the chat box or just unmute yourself. What do you notice as some of the biggest changes or differences, I should say, between these three resumes? Anyone willing to share? All right, definitely more eye-catching, so you stand out yeah, and I presume you mean one of these, the creative resumes, right? There's more color, on it, right? And there's, funky kind of diagrams it can be, right? Sometimes, sometimes they're done more as kind of like an infograph, right? That's what this one looks almost more like, an infograph, if you've seen those, to discuss. Like there was a great one that they used to have at GovLoop on interviewing, and it was, the step-by-step guide. It was a long kind of, infograph. And this one, that's what this one reminds me of when I look at it, right? This one's a little more traditional, right? I mean, it has the photo and such and the color and, some different things, but it's a little more traditional than the one that I just left, right? But still quite a bit different, right? You have, like these personal skills and kind of the ratings, and whatever, there. You have, well, a picture, and I want to talk a moment on a picture because a creative resume does not necessarily mandate a picture, right? Because many of you, some of you who've maybe participated in some of my webinars in the past have heard me say again and again, your traditional resume does not include a picture. Leave the picture off. The picture is for your LinkedIn profile, which they will also check, almost guaranteed, right? The vast majority of employers will check that. So have it there, but not on your resume, is what typically some employers don't want to see the photos because they don't want to be, for example, maybe accused of discriminatory, actions or, whatnot. So they prefer not to see it, right? But oftentimes in creative resumes, you're kind of going out there, and you're many times I do see many, a vast majority, I would say, or many of the at least samples that I see do have a picture. So, and of course, outside of the States, it's standard, they use more of the CV, which is kind of like a resume, but it's longer, it's more extensive, all of that. And those have pictures. So it's pretty much the States that, doesn't really use CVs. It doesn't have the photo standardly. But so you can see here, it is quite different. We're going to be talking about, I'm going to be sharing some resources with you, obviously, as usual, in the follow-up email that I'll send out. Some of helpful articles that really talk about this and that outline some of the free services there are, because a lot of these, like these, look really nice, right? But you don't necessarily have to know how to do this from scratch yourself. There are many websites where they help you, and many of them are free. So you can have a free account and you can come up with something, like this without even investing, money in it. Others have, some sort of a fee per month. So we're going to talk about this, and just let me know as you have questions. We'll certainly, answer those. So creative resumes are more for specific populations, okay, in general. So in general, job seekers that are in the creative types of industries, right? Graphic design, marketing, social media, the ones that use technology a lot, right? There's obviously not even an underlying expectation. There's a huge expectation that you be extremely fluent in, right, in, or however you say that, right, in computers, in IT, in tech, in all those kinds of things. So doing a creative resume allows you to spotlight that and allows you to show them, look how I can market myself, and I could market your organization in this way, in different ways, creatively. So it's just it's oftentimes for, or more often for, the creative types. Now that includes artists as well. Some of those websites that I'm going to talk about have like portfolios. Artists, have their portfolios and all of that. So there's some online types of, sharing of that as well. And again, that's a creative type, right? So sometimes candidates who aren't necessarily going for a creative job, like they're maybe not going for like a graphics type of job in a software tech firm, but they're going for a job where they're looking for creative, self starters, and people who, think outside the box. That, using more of a creative resume can definitely be a way to think outside the box, and let's face it, grab the attention of that employer, right? I mean, honestly, when you see, when you're looking at this versus this, which ones are going to catch your eye? I know for me, it'd be one of the first two. It's much more digestible, right? But that doesn't mean that, you're always going to be able to use it. But if if you have materials that you want to reference, like video materials or photos, things like that, right? That's related to, their industry or what the job that you're going for, that kind of thing. It could be a good way for you to, you might want to think about doing one of these creative resumes, whether it's having some site host your website or your site, and then you share that with them or whatever. But there's pros and cons, and we're going to talk about that, and when it makes sense and when it maybe doesn't make sense. Okay. And there's an in between too. I'm going to be talking about some of the creative elements that you can incorporate even into your regular resume to make it pop a little bit more, even if you aren't one of those creative types that are, going for those, specific jobs that we say, oh, they're the real target for this kind of a resume. So some of the pros, and what it can help you, like I said, obviously stand out, and set you apart from the masses, because it's going to be different, right? What you created is going to be different than that kind of more generic template kind of, thing that they're used to seeing for the traditional chronological, resume. Okay. It also is going to spotlight your accomplishments more than maybe necessarily your experience even, right? Or your skills. and your expertise more than maybe your jobs that you've held. And for that reason, it can be also good for someone who has limited experience. If you don't have a lot of experience, it's going to be hard to do that traditional resume and have it, really look, not look incomplete maybe, right? Or, oh, she's, brand new out of college or whatever, or he, or, whatever. But if you have these good like skills and all of that you can put onto that creative resume, that can be really impressive and be more important for them to snag you and then interview you, at which point you're obviously going to be able to, explain why you're the best candidate and, do all of that. Okay. So questions on that before I move on? If you do have them, just drop them into the chat box, or you can unmute too. Let's talk briefly about the cons of creating, of creative resume writing. Okay. It can sometimes work against you in certain fields, right? In more traditional fields. And quite honestly, what I've heard, everything I've read and such will say, banking, finance, insurance, those kinds of organizations generally want the standard resume, and probably, and really a lot of other organizations too. They're used to it. They know where to find the things that they want to look for. So when people are more used to something, usually they like it more, right? So getting something that has an infograph on it and they're thinking, what is this? It doesn't show XYZ, right? So how can I, that they might not like it, right? So the other big negative of it is that the ATS, your applicant tracking systems, which are basically it's software that a lot of organizations will use for a first level screening on your resume, where they put it through and they're looking for the keywords that they had really emphasized maybe in their job description and certain things like that, where the computer can do that initial read for standard resumes and be boom and put that out and say these are the ones that you should really waste your time looking at, right? Now when you do a creative resume, right, those ATS systems, they can't read that content, so that could get you spit out. So one of the biggest things I'm going to talk to you about, like, how do you decide what to use? And we have a question in the box, Sarah, who's saying, for teaching, I'm a high school teacher, or in education in general. I think probably in general for education, you would do your standard one, right? But I do think that you could spice it up a little bit. I mean, you could try one of these as well. Depends on maybe your experience and such too. What are you teaching? Are you teaching IT or some kind of, in high school that could really work for you? Somebody who like proves that they're very good at, at doing these kinds of, creative things that could work for you. If it's English that you're teaching or history or whatever, I'm not sure that would be of necessarily of the truly completely creative one. And you'll learn a little more about what that means too as we go through, and then the ways that maybe you would decide instead to incorporate some of the creative resume principles into your regular resume to make it pop more. So Marie, you also said your field, international education management, study abroad. Great. Yeah, I think I would probably, well, I have a slide on this. And what I would say is try to find out from the field and from the networking that you're obviously going to be doing or you're already doing. If you're applying for a specific organization, try to find out from somebody there, hey, do they like creative resumes, such as, this style, or do they prefer your standard? Like, get it from the source, right? I mean, they're the ones I'm guessing based on, well, in general, types of trends, but find out from the source, right? And when you're doing these, career chats and you're talking to other educators in that field of international education management, whatever, find out from them, like what kind of a resume do you use? And is it right? Sometimes in education, I will tell you that you're using the CV. In colleges, they pretty much use CVs. So many times when you're applying for, a teaching job, faculty, that kind of thing, they might already be doing the CV, which is longer. And I have actually a separate webinar that's on the YouTube playlist that's specifically talking about your traditional resume versus your functional versus, there's the different kinds, and the CV versus your standard resume and what the differences are. So you might be doing a CV, which is longer, you know, and more detailed and that kind of thing. So that's what I would say, Marie, but definitely check it out. So awesome. And there's no just in that social studies and English there. You know, that's awesome. That is great. Someone put Sarah put just social studies and English. That is awesome. All right, so let's go on. And this is that same, you know, screenshot that I had there. Deciding. So chronological versus the traditional. So first, obviously asking yourself, is your job the creative type? And if it is that creative type that we talked about, right, with your, you know, graphic design and social media and, you know, that kind of stuff, then yeah, I would seriously consider a creative resume, and still, yeah, check with people in the field as well. But through networking to decide what's appropriate for your target companies. You know, maybe there are some that prefer that and some that prefer the traditional. So I do hear a lot about, if you are doing a creative, to have the your traditional as well available, at least so that they can see a traditional if they want to. I've, you know, heard some say, well, you could, you know, provide both, but that might be a little overkill. I think it might be a little confusing. Like, wait, which is the resume then? Why are they, you know, putting this in? But that just depends. I would definitely talk to the network and see what they think on that too. If you're in doubt at all, I would probably encourage you to lean more toward a traditional resume and maybe putting some of those creative aspects to give it a little bit of color to pop or things like that that we're going to talk about, versus going the full on creative if you can't find out from your sources and such. Only because, you know, about 70% of employers are like expecting that more traditional type of resume, at least. And yeah, so you can supplement it, like I said, with creative online elements, some little things that you can do, which I'll talk about in a moment. But I do want to mention the websites for creative resumes and for materials. These are materials that you can go on and you can actually create. Now, these are ones that are free, or at least they have a free version and a paid version. Now, some of you might have used Prezi before. It really kind of, it definitely was like the big thing about, oh, I don't know, was it maybe 8 years ago, maybe, or 5 to 8 years ago? It got like really, really, you know, like that. It was just the coolest thing, and everyone was supposed to change from PowerPoint to Prezi, and you know that never quite happened. At least when I was working at Peace Corps headquarters, and I haven't heard of it like taking over, you know, PowerPoint certainly, but you can do some really nice, very visually pleasing things with Prezi. And they have a tool that's Presumes, nice name there, right? So it's more of that creative resume kind of templates, right? and and they have a free version. So look at, you know, the free versus the paid version to decide if you really do need the paid version. I don't know if you will. I know it's LinkedIn, you definitely don't need it. There's another site, About Me, that allows you to post different things. I think it has video and some other stuff, so it houses it there for you, right? And then you can share the URL on your resume with your, you know, employer, that kind of thing, to allow them to see more supplemental materials and things, which is really nice, right? And then there's VisualCV, which is a cool one, .com, right? What's You can get like a free online resume, right? And you can include like all these graphics, and you know, there's templates. But what's really great is you can export it easily to, you know, a PDF, to be able to include, you know, like if you want to include it just on your own instead of having to refer them to a site or just use a website, whatever, right? And it provides analytics with which some of these other ones do too. There's a lot more than these and I'm giving you a source where it has a lot more that are listed. But basically it can show you like the analytics of like people who've opened it, how many, you know, open rates, and you know, your traffic, and who's looking at it, which is pretty cool. To have that kind of information, it's a lot cooler than when you submit your regular resume as an attachment and then you wait for weeks on end and you don't hear anything, and you know, just wonder, you know, you know, are they even looking at me? Am I out of the, you know, ballpark? Am I not going to be considered? That kind of thing. So they're pretty cool. Now, the VisualCV one, I know, when I just was looking recently, I just checked, you know, their pricing and such. The free version, I think, includes one one like resume, online free resume, whatever. So that might be all that you need, and that's fine. If you're looking to do some different ones and such, I think it's like $12 a month, which is actually pretty reasonable when you think about it. I mean, that's how many, Starbucks coffees or whatever that people might, get a lot more frequently than that. So, it might be worth it. And I'm not promoting it. It's a paid service. I'm just saying, look at what they have. And I know that they do like a free sample too. So you could even get your free sample and then do your one free and then see, maybe you don't need any more. But check them out. I mean, these are all tools to help you. So yeah, so just check those out. And then, as I said, consider incorporating non-traditional elements into your resume. So, your LinkedIn profile, like that should pretty much, I think these days, standardly be on your resume. I mean, if you have room for it and such, up top where you have your contact information, just if you have LinkedIn, of course, and most of you probably do, and it's probably the most important one. I would say if you're going to get any, do LinkedIn, and there's the free version, and it's definitely enough. You don't have to pay for it to have, it be beneficial. But include your LinkedIn profile URL, and make sure that when you're creating it, what it does is it creates a standard, URL for you that's personalized with like your name and all these jumbled letters and numbers. It's really like it's not it's not ideal. What you can do though is you can go in and you can just click on edit profile, right? The little, I think it's just a little pencil or whatever, and then you can edit that and you can just type in, some variation of your name. Now, it may very well be, I know Jodi Hammer was already taken. It was already, there were like, so, I put, you can put like, letters after it, or numbers after it, whatever, just something that's easy and shorter. And then you can use that profile URL, your LinkedIn profile, you can put that on your resume so that they can, right from the start, kind of get, access to that, which is pretty cool as well. Um, and then your website, if you use the one like About Me or some of the other ones that are actually the websites about you, that you can create the personalized website to house your professional materials, right? Your videos you've done, maybe articles you've written, or who knows. But you can include that website URL if you'd like on your resume, right? Um, you can also include the URL to some other free online areas where your information might be. So it's helpful to just steer them to what they're looking for. You might reference that even in, a cover letter or something, right? So when I was talking about making it pop, okay, so making your standard resume pop. So instead of being that like chronological, key qualifications, professional experience, just without anything on it, it's just the black and white. You could add a bit of color, but the key is a bit. Do not do it as colorful as over here, obviously. But I would do very little elements. Maybe it's your header. Maybe you have a background. Your fill background is maybe a blue or something. And I don't know, like just so it just makes it pop a little more, but yet it has, the information that needs to be there. Um, you can also think about using some of the lesser known, I mean, comparatively, right? Times New Roman is oftentimes a default that people will end up using for their resume. And I remember hearing one designer referred to it, this was years ago now, probably 5 years, 6 years ago. They said, wearing or using Times New Roman is the equivalency of wearing sweatpants to an interview. They like didn't like that font. They were like, it's just so generic and everyone uses it, blah, blah, blah. So set yourself apart a little bit, right? So that might mean a lot of different ones, right? Garriman, Georgia. There's several, right, that you could use. I don't know which ones, you all like to use, but you might consider using something other than Times New Roman, right? Something that's easy to read, and that you don't go too small in the size either. Okay. You might decide to make your resume a skills-based resume, right? Where you're really emphasizing the skills that you have. And that sometimes is called, or it's a variation of your kind of functional or a mixed, resume. And what I mean is, instead of having just where you have, maybe your key qualifications, which I always recommend, right? The things that are most relevant to that job, to cook them right up front. then after that, having like your professional competencies or whatever it is. So in that organization, what are they, what are they looking for? So the skills they're looking for, is it project management skills? Then you might have a header, project management, and then you have the bullets underneath that come from your various jobs. Doesn't have to be the most recent first, it can be whatever, and you don't list what job it's from, right? You just have those competencies proved, so it's like all of your skill set, and then it goes into your your job history or work history, where it's just literally where you worked, when, and your title and the dates, right? I mean, that's it. So doing, you might think about that too, but be careful, because functional resumes, some people really like them. Sometimes they can really make your content pop, and I really, at times can promote them and think that they're, a good alternative. Some people really don't like them because they're different than what they're used to. They're not the norm. They're like hard to wait. Well, where did she work? How long? Where did she get the skill? How, so it can be harder for them maybe to do their like review of you and make sure you have the adequate um experience and stuff like that, if they're not familiar with that style, right? But again, it just depends on the job that you're going for, but that can make it pop a little bit more as well, those certain skills that you're looking for. Okay, so I'm going to stop for a moment and I'm going to check the chat box. Please put any questions that you do have into the chat box now, if you haven't already, or just open up your mic, not, unmute yourself. I have people listed, right? I have the participants, so I can see if you're, I think, unmuting, and go ahead and ask your question. Let's see, I'm going to scroll up and see. Oh, great, Sarah.
I'm Sarah, yeah. So I'm actually
calling to say something, Sarah? I can't hear you.
Oh.
Now I can.
Oh, now you can?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm actually calling you. I'm still in my Peace Corps country. I served in Indonesia and then married someone here, so I'm still here.
Oh, wow.
And we're looking to move back to the United States in July. And I'm one of the people who said I was in education as a teacher. And I'm wondering if you just have a sense of when a good time is to start sending out resumes and sort of vetting and finding out what the time around which people are starting to hire, especially in light of everything with COVID. So
that's what I was just going to come back with. Yeah, I mean, COVID has just put everything on its, top. I mean, in a normal environment, right? They're looking at, I mean, as soon as they get their, when their teachers say they're going to be leaving, right? They're like starting to look and, trying to, figure it out. And then they have the summer, and then hopefully everyone's in by the fall when they start. But right now, yeah, that's completely different. But I will tell you that because of COVID, I know for a fact that many teachers are uncomfortable going back to the classroom, and they just are thinking, you know what, I'm just going to retire at this age, because they're in that, age where they feel like I'm not going to put myself at risk to, so you're probably, don't quote me on this, but you might have more opportunities, a little bit more last minute than usual.
Okay.
But it also might be that they're doing more of the virtual learning still. You know what I mean? I think it depends on where you are. I have no expectation that my daughter, I have a 7.5-year-old, she's in second grade. She won't be back this year, I don't think. I mean, I'll be lucky if she's back by the fall. So I think, it just depends on where, what's going on. But with COVID right now and, rapidly increasing, I mean, spiking, drastically because of the weather and all of that, you're going to have this like continued, virtual kind of setup. And then, you'll depends, when people are going, going back, and when they'll be looking then to replace people. But I would put your word out, put the word out to your network to ask, different teachers in different places. Where are you looking to come back to, Sarah?
To the middle of the hotspot, Wisconsin.
Okay. I'm from Minnesota.
Oh yeah.
In Iowa, so I'm right by you. Yep. And you are right. That's definitely part of the hotspot. That is the hotspot too. So, yeah, it will be. I would definitely put feelers out to your friends, and just your friends who aren't teachers, just saying, hey, can you just check with people that you know, friends that you know, like what are they seeing in terms of hiring? Are there a lot of opportunities? Because I've been told there's also a lot of teachers that are out on quarantine, that they have to go out when there's exposures and all of that. So it's just a mess. It's a hot mess in terms of trying to have enough people in the classroom. Or not, I mean, not in the classroom, in the virtual, but like doing the job. And when you have people who are sick, or or if they're doing hybrid model and they're doing half the time in class and half out, they're having a hard time getting people to staff the in. So
Yeah.
there
Okay.
might be some opportunities
Thank
there too. Yeah, no problem. No problem. Well, welcome back in advance, and happy to
you.
work with you more on a one-on-one basis too. And the same with the rest of you. You can certainly contact me as well.
Okay.
We'll put my email in the chat box too. Great. Any other questions? Lexi, are there any new ones that came in? I didn't see any.
I don't see any.
Okay, that's fine. No problem. Let's go ahead and talk about video resumes and the video interview, because I think that's also related. The video resume, of course, is, there's different ways that it can be done. It is becoming more frequent. It's not the majority by any stretch of the imagination. When I say more frequent, it wasn't very frequent before at all, and now it's picking up. And obviously, right now, with COVID, that impacts it, I'm sure, as well. But oftentimes, and I'm wondering if any of you have had this, either put your hand up or just write in the chat box. Have any of you done a video? Let's start with video interview, where you've the company has given you certain questions, and you go in and you just answer them, and you can do like 3 takes or whatever it is, and then you push send and they get it. Have any of you done that? That's how they work with the interviews. I don't see any hands, so never even heard of that. Yep, Sarah, it is a thing. It is a thing. So that's how it works, right? Responding to recorded, they give you the questions, not in advance. Generally, they just give them to you and they say, you have 30 minutes. You can retake each of these questions whatever amount of time. Sometimes it's a time, like you can't do it more than 3 times, but you just push record and interview it, listen to it, see if you're okay with it, push upload. So the other aspect is the video resume. And so this is more where you're basically describing yourself, and it's verbally, right? So you're on camera and you're describing yourself. It's more like, really like maybe a little bit longer elevator pitch, where you're like pitching yourself, and what you can do, what you're looking for, that kind of a thing. And then people can listen to those. And again, those are oftentimes for the more creatives, or if you're going to be somebody on camera, clearly they want to see how you do. If you're applying to be a newscaster, right, they want to see how you would do on camera and how comfortable you are with it, that kind of thing. So it does make sense. No problem, Marie. Thanks for joining us today. Great. So any questions on this part? No. Anyone want to unmute if you have a question? I'm dropping my email in to the chat box here for you. If you have other questions or want to talk one-on-one, want to talk about resume, that kind of thing, happy to set up a one-on-one appointment with you.
Can I ask another question totally unrelated to my education field?
Of course.
Sometimes I forget that there's also opportunities to work with Peace Corps domestically. Could you talk about what some of those positions?
Yeah, of course.
Like
of course. Yeah, no problem. So Peace Corps headquarters is great. I spent 12 years there, loved it. And I was in the Career Center the whole time, pretty much. So, got to work with RPCVs, which is my passion. But you do time out. I was very fortunate to receive the 3rd tour, and then some expert appointments for a couple of years, which got me to the 12. But typically you have a 5-year rule, so just keep that in mind, so that but you can certainly make a good career there. Like, it's a good career move. You can get great experience there. Many people come in. It depends on your background and the amount of experience that you had. I would say for folks that maybe went to Peace Corps within 1 to 5 years of their undergraduate or 1 to 4, they might be coming in as like a recruiter, which is, you know, a fun job normally when you get to get out and actually go to the, you know, the campuses and, you know, like help people apply, which is, you know, great in many ways. There's also like some part-time positions that are like based that are, what do you call it, strat recruiters, where they're strategic recruiters at specific campuses that are like um high Peace Corps applicant draws. You know, they're you know, you have like the top lists and whatever, so you'll have at different colleges where you have that. So there's the recruiter. There's also country desk officers, which that's a great job. And that is one, I mean, that's one where you're basically kind of the liaison between Peace Corps headquarters and the country staff in terms of everything from, okay, the new group that's coming in and anything. You're like you're the person that's, you know, the main kind of, you know, and you write up reports and things, and you of course make sure that you're, you know, the staff in country get what they need, you know, all that kind of thing. So it's managing that type of thing. So that's good. And a lot of people will start as recruiters, and then they might try to, you know, go into a country desk officer CDO position, which is generally I don't know if it's a 9 equivalent, GS9. They use the FP system. So just so you know, happy to talk to you more about that, Sarah, you know, more in detail on, you know, on our own, either at the end of this if you want, or you could certainly, you know, we could set up a time for you to call me and we could chat more. But I mean, I loved Peace Corps headquarters. Check out their jobs. Really, if you still have NCE, get on their Peace Corps roster, because it's literally a roster of the people who have NCE who are applying, and it gets you on these. I mean, then you're in the running, and then people can pull your name. They can look at your resume and say, hey, I like her. She looks like she'd be good. I want to interview her. So it's a lot different than the standard. You've got to apply for, you know, this specific job. You can be considered for multiple jobs for up to, I think it's either 6 months or it's quite a long time. So so try that as well. Yeah, and there's other positions, I mean, that come available too. You're going to see all of them on, you know, Peace Corps' site or on USA Jobs. When you look for Peace Corps, you can get the alerts for certain positions. Don't be totally scared off if you don't have NCE, because I know a lot of people are like, oh, you'll never get in anywhere if you don't have NCE. You know what? I have never gotten a federal job with my NCE. And I've, you know, I mean, I had it with, you know, my Peace Corps job that I got, my staff job, and I used to work for another federal agency. I got both of those through the open competitive, you know, open to all US citizens. So you can get them that way too. It's a little more work sometimes, and you know, but it definitely can come through as well. Okay. So yeah, call me later or stay on this later, and I'm happy to chat with you. Okay. All right, so let's just go ahead to other questions, because we're at the end here. And we have, I mean, technically we have about 10 minutes left. So if you do have questions, please let me know. I'm happy to take any of those. Yeah, or you can just unmute and say it as well if there's anyone that wants to ask a question. I'll stop for a moment. You still have time. Ah, the silence, right? That is fine if there aren't. And if you prefer, again, as a reminder, you can always drop it in the chat box if you do have questions on. First, I would say creative resumes, but then, you know, if we've already exhausted the questions that we have, any aspect of the job search. I mean, and then one of the things that we really want to get from you before you leave is, you know, what other topics do you want me to do? Because I've done now, I don't know, you know, I don't know, 50 some, you know, webinars, and we have the podcast. So if you have any suggestions for topics that you would like covered, you know, I've done a lot of different things, but I don't like to just go back and redo the same exact session. So I always try to put, you know, if there's a spin on it, or, you know, I can go back and do one if there's a lot of, you know, requests for a certain topic as well. But just let me know either here, or yeah, you can drop it in the chat box, or great. Thanks, Lexi. I appreciate that. yeah, if there are any. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, you can go ahead and look. Sarah, if you go to, let's see, the easiest way to get there. If you go to NPCA's website, which is just Peace Corps Connect. Actually, I'll be sending it to you in the letter as well. It'll be the first bullet on, like, you know, the Global Reentry playlist. But you could also get there if you went to peacecorpsconnect.org, and then you went to like the careers page, and you could get it there. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, since I think it seems like most of the questions are answered. And then I invite any of you to stick on if you do have any final questions. Thanks so much and have a great night.
Thank you.